Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly well-documented history of two working-class people making some seriously life-altering choices back in 1830s England. Now, this isn't your typical story of kings or generals. It's a story of everyday survival, love, and just immense determination, all perfectly preserved in the historical records of Alexander Whittle and Rachel Morley. So what pushes someone to pack their entire existence into a trunk and sail across the world? To answer that, we really have to look at how ordinary people, caught right in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, managed to navigate crushing poverty, really strict societal expectations, and the heavy, grinding machinery of 19th century life. Let's dive in. Section 1. The Sawyer and the Mill Girl. Okay, let's drop right into the sensory world of Bolton-le-Moors in the spring of 1838. Picture a bustling cotton town literally running on noise and industry, where the clatter of the looms spread out across the valley, almost like weather. Tucked within this chaotic, loud town, there was a slightly quieter, more rhythmic environment over at the timber yard. For a 20-year-old journeyman sawyer named Alexander Whittle, his whole world was highly tactile. The sawdust was in absolutely everything. It settled in his hair, the creases of his knuckles, and it left this faint, sweet taste, like the memory of a forest, on the back of his throat. And he truly, genuinely loved the work. What's really fascinating here is the stark contrast in their backgrounds when they practically collide, literally over a dropped bundle of cloth at the Churchgate Market in April 1838. You've got Alexander, who comes from this loud, incredibly crowded upbringing as the second youngest of 12 children. And then there's Rachel, who lives a fiercely independent, quiet, and orphan existence over on Loom Street. So how did Rachel actually get by? She relied entirely on piecework. She would carry bundles of finished cloth, taking them in by the week from the mills. And she survived alongside her twin sister Leah without taking a single handout of charity. This independence was hard-won, especially after their mother, Jane, died of drink and poverty 4 years prior. Because of this, the sisters were known around town as hard girls, who absolutely took care of themselves. Section 2. Courtship on Lum Street. So, after bumping into each other at the market, Alexander suddenly starts finding all these reasons to walk past Rachel's street. Their courtship builds slowly through these quiet, shared moments, shifting from the loud, dusty timber yard to the sanctuary of the sisters' home. And the sensory details here are just incredible to think about. Rachel and Leah kept a neat, orderly room that smelled strongly of dried rosemary. Why? Because they were purposefully avoiding that damp wool stench from the mills that basically permeated the rest of the town. Having that hanging bunch of rosemary shows exactly how the sisters exerted control over their small, tough world. But, Rachel hadn't always had that kind of control. When she was just 11, she was actually subjected to a removal order. This was a really harsh legal mechanism back then, used to forcibly relocate impoverished people. She and her family were carted off to Blackburn basically like a parcel. And that deep trauma, the trauma of being moved without having any say whatsoever, fundamentally defined her outlook on the world. Sitting out on the moor overlooking the town, Rachel tells Alexander, "If I ever went anywhere, I'd go because I chose to." It's such a profound testament to the immense power of working-class agency and her absolute iron will. Section 3. A Child's Coming. But life, of course, has a funny way of complicating our plans, right? A terribly hard winter in 1839 brings frozen ground, completely stalled work at the timber yard, and some pretty life-changing news. Rachel is pregnant. Standing right there in the pouring rain, Rachel breaks the news to him. And Alexander's immediate, steady response is just to go straight to the vicar for the banns. Now, banns were a public church announcement that took about 3 weeks to complete. It was essentially the practical workaround for the working class who simply couldn't afford to buy a fast marriage license. When Alexander says he'll arrange those banns, Rachel just replies simply, "Now you know." It's a sparse but incredibly powerful acknowledgement of his steady resolve to step up and stay by her side, which, frankly, was definitely not a guarantee from a lot of other men during that era. Tracking their timeline from this point forward, you see how rapidly everything builds. Their daughter, Elizabeth, is born in June of 1839, well before they can actually afford to officially wed. But they methodically plan out this rapid sequence of next steps: a wedding in February 1840, filing an emigration application by May, and literally sailing away by September. It's just an unbelievable burst of momentum. Section 4. The parish wedding. The first step in that whirlwind timeline is the wedding itself. They're married on a frosty February morning in 1840. It's a highly practical, understated affair. Alexander actually wore a borrowed coat that was a full inch too short in the sleeves, and quiet pride totally took center stage over any kind of pageantry.
At the altar, the registry book perfectly captures their differing educational opportunities. Alexander signs the marriage register with a firm, clear signature, one he actually taught himself from a borrowed primer. Rachel, meanwhile, makes a simple X as her mark. But in a really beautiful moment, Alexander immediately promises to teach her to write her own name, a promise he absolutely keeps in the months that follow.
Section 5. Choosing a new world. Literally, the very same day they're married, Rachel initiates the next massive step. Hours after the wedding, sitting at the local inn, she presents a proposition she's been pondering for weeks, a government bounty scheme for families migrating to New South Wales. As she points out, they want sawyers, skilled trades, they'll pay the passage. By leveraging Alexander's highly specific skill at the timber yard, Rachel suddenly sees a viable pathway to finally enact the exact choice she promised herself years ago out on the moors. But wanting to go and actually getting there, well, those are two completely different beasts. The mechanics of early emigration were rigidly, almost painfully bureaucratic. At the Manchester Emigration Office, a brisk officer just fired off exact questions about their age, trade, marriage, children, church, and health. The whole process was so fast and impersonal that the officer actually misspelled their last name as Whittle and completely misheard Rachel's mother's name on the final paperwork. Fast forward to August, they're now packing their entire existence into just 2 trunks and a basket. Alexander comes to this profound realization. You couldn't take the life, only the things. And the things were just things. They had to leave behind Rachel's twin, a tearful Leah, to go off and face the vast, terrifying expanse of the Southern Ocean. As you can imagine, it was an agonizing goodbye. As their cart unrolls toward Liverpool and their ship, the Brothers, in the late summer light, Alexander asks her if she's afraid. She admits she's a little afraid. But then she adds, I chose it. That's something. And right there, Rachel claims her ultimate victory of self-determination. They weren't being packed away like parcels anymore. They were finally steering their own destiny. So we leave 1840 Lancashire, asking you to reflect on this for a second. What seemingly small choices in your past are defining the trajectory of your history today? How do the deliberate choices we make echo across oceans and completely shape our own narratives? Think about that for a bit. And thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.